tried to make it Sunday, but I got so damn depressed that I set my sights on Monday, and I got myself undressed. I ain't ready for the altar, but I do agree there's times when a woman sure can be a friend of mine. But I keep on thinking about you, sister golden hair surprise, and I just can't live without you. Can't you see it in my eyes? I've been one more correspondent, I've been too hard to find, but it doesn't mean you ain't been on my mind. Will you meet me in the middle? Will you meet me in the air? Will you love me just a little, just enough to show?
So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the second event now of our Open Innovation Series. My name's Janet Coyle. I'm the Managing Director for Business at London & Partners. So London & Partners is London's business growth and destination management agency. Now, we've created the Open Innovation Series to really shine a light on open innovation in London and all the wonderful innovation that's happening across the city, but particularly with the innovative solutions that are happening across the corporates. Now, there's never been a more important time for open innovation, whether you're a large corporate or a startup. Everyone right now, I think, is looking for ways to innovate towards recovery. It's often overlooked in harder times, but really, some people consider it a luxury. It absolutely isn't. So we consider innovation to be really essential for business growth, and ultimately those businesses who are innovative, who do address open innovation, they achieve better results and better results than their competitors. So at London & Partners, we've created the Open Innovation Fellowship. It's for senior level executives who are really wanting to take their open innovation activity to the next level, and also who are keen to be part of a community, and a community that's looking to really drive change. So what is it? What is this Open Innovation Fellowship? It's a 4-month executive education program that's delivered in lots of small modules. At the moment, it's delivered online. And it really brings together leaders of open innovation or leaders of innovation across corporates who are wanting to make their activity more effective, more inclusive, and also innovation leaders who are genuinely wanting to be part of a community across multiple sectors. Now, we run this in partnership with the RCA, the Royal Academy of Art, and the fellows only cohorts that we bring together, they graduate with a really comprehensive understanding of design thinking and innovation mindset. And also they leave with a clear action plan of how they can go back to their organisations, their companies, and really try and fulfil their ambitions with their colleagues. So we've had a really successful cohort that's just graduated just about a couple of weeks ago, which was really exciting. And we're now about to launch our second cohort in March, on the 18th of March. And then we're already looking ahead to September. We'll be launching our third cohort. And I think what the fellows on the recent cohort have really experienced and what they're really excited about is the whole new network that they've managed to build across the London ecosystem. And we've really enjoyed connecting them to different parts of London and different innovators as well. So do get in touch if you want to learn more, or if you maybe want to join one of the cohorts, we'd love to talk to you. But as you can tell, I mean, London and Partners, everything we do is in collaboration. It's in collaboration with influencers, stakeholders, innovators, organisations right across the London ecosystem. And today, I'm really thrilled actually, because we're going to be joined by one of our ambassadors of the fellowship very shortly, Andrew Humphries, but then also Lauren Quigley, who heads up our innovation programmes team, and this fellowship is going to be having a conversation with What Three Words and the Royal Mail. So you can really hear some practical examples about open innovation and how it's working and how successful it can be. So I want to say a few words about Andrew before I give him a proper welcome to our virtual stage. So Andrew Humphries, I'm thrilled that he's able to join us today. He's a really brilliant collaborator, and he's worked with numerous corporates, from Rolls-Royce, HSBC, AXA, many, and he's really helped them to connect, but also partner with startups and innovators, and make sure he helps them through that partnership to make sure that it's really successful and also really productive. He was also voted one of Sunday Times Maserati 100, so recognising British business leaders who actively give back to the next generation of entrepreneurs. So he pays it forward every day, does Andrew, and I'm thrilled to be a collaborator and an ambassador on this fellowship. He's going to share his thoughts today on how you can bet on disruptive technology to ensure it succeeds, how to build an innovative pipeline, but also how to measure it, how to track that you're actually doing the right thing and you're actually being more productive because of that innovation. So welcome, Andrew. Lovely to have you with us this afternoon.
Hi, Janet. It's great to be here, and thanks for such an amazing introduction. Hopefully I can live up to it.
Over to you. It's really lovely to have you with us, Andrew. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here. I hope you can see me now. And I'm really excited to talk about this because for a lot of corporates, you know, working particularly with startups and trying to do innovation, you know, it's a pretty risky, it feels risky. It's very difficult to get people to, you know, to buy into it. It looks that it's littered with failure, I think, is the challenge. And for people that are trying to drive innovation, you know, you're often having to get over that. So we do a lot of thinking about that here at the bakery, and we've built a set of methodologies and processes. And as Janet says, you know, we now deploy these processes and methodologies across many medium and large corporates, not just here in London, but actually all around the world, and have built a repeatable process that allows you to measure how you're getting on. And I want to share some of the learnings with you. So if we can get to my slide presentation, get my first slide up, that would be great. And I can talk you through how we think about innovation and how we think about it in the corporate environment. As I said, it sounds risky, but it shouldn't really be a game of chance. It's often thought of as gambling. You know, you're making bets, and even we even use this terminology in our own mantras. We call it making lots of small bets, and we believe that's a proper strategy. But it's definitely not a game of chance. And the idea is that you should be able to manage the odds. The important thing here, and this comes very difficult to lots of corporates, is not to be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of the F word. The reality is that if you're doing innovation, some of it will fail. And the real issue here is, you know, how many do you need to do before you get to success? And how do you make that happen in such a way that success is guaranteed? And this is the real challenge, because obviously corporates are allergic to any kind of risk. But I'm going to show you in a little while that actually that's not strictly true. The important thing is understanding and managing that risk so that it stops being seen and perceived as risky. So if you move on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how startups, this image is from a really cool sitcom called Silicon Valley. And we often think about startups and the way that they are risky. And, so many statistics about how many startups fail. And that's definitely true. There's a high failure rate in startups. If you think about how startups think, however, they embrace that risk. You've got a bunch of people who are definitely betting something. They're giving up, a year or two, maybe more of their career path, probably, not earning a huge salary. But they are putting something in, but that's a relatively small downside for what could be a really massive upside. And that's what they're hoping for, this big, win in the future. So it's an asymmetric risk. It's relatively low downside, big upside. It's really one big bet for these people. And they normally expect that it's a pretty low chance of success. That I think, the average failure rate is about 1 in 10 succeed. So, it's pretty low chance of success, but it's an asymmetric risk for these people. If we move on to the next slide, then we'll see that actually the important thing is that people understand this. Investors invest in these startups. How do they manage the risk? They love the upside, this big win thing, but they can't just blow up a complete fund. Often the money is other people's money. They can't get rid of it. They need to manage the risk whilst delivering, expected returns. If you think about an investment fund, they're really looking to drive probably a 3 times return, a 3x return, more if it's a seed investment fund over a 10-year period. So how do they do that? Well, they construct portfolios of startups. They don't just put all the money onto one. They construct a portfolio of startups, and they put little bits in at the beginning, and then they see which ones are winning, and they double down on those. But they also pretty quickly kill the ones that aren't succeeding. They stop investing in the ones that aren't succeeding. We all know that, if you look at a typical fund, an investment fund, that the majority of the investments actually fail. They lose money. 50% on average return less than the money that was put in. Only 35%, sort of break even. And actually, it's only 5%, 1 in 20, that really deliver all of the return. Interesting thing about that, of course, is that it doesn't matter who you talk to, no matter what they say, at the beginning, they've got no idea which is the one out of the 20. They think all of them are good, otherwise they wouldn't invest in the first place. So they can't really tell at the beginning which one is going to be the 1 out of 20 that is going to really succeed and pay back. So that's how they manage this environment. And it's just been going on for many, many years. It's a well-known, equation. If you do the right due diligence and you do it this way, then you'll get this kind of return. So if we translate that by moving on to the next slide into the corporate environment, if we think about it, the problem here, as I said at the beginning, is that corporates hate any kind of risk. Well-managed businesses, manage out the risk. They need to protect, their business. They can't afford scandal. They can't afford to fail. Employees within the organization are often, driven against failure. It's a terrible thing to do. But if you look at all of the different things that corporates do, actually, they do lots of risky things all the time. They do them already. If you think about sales, most corporates do some kind of sales. They don't expect every prospect or every lead to convert. They have a marketing plan, and they know that they have to fill a marketing funnel, and they know they have to get so many, prospects, customers, or potential customers into the pipeline, and they know that they will convert a percentage of them. And that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable to them. It doesn't seem like a risk. But if you went out and said, right, I'm going to, make one telephone call, and that is going to deliver all the revenue for the year, people would think that you were daft. So, sales isn't looked at as risky, although most sales prospecting and most marketing opportunities don't convert. Actually, only a smaller percentage of them typically convert. And that's true for lots of things that organizations do. If you think about, an oil company, they do a lot of research about where the oil is, but they absolutely don't expect that every time they sink a drill into the ground, they're going to strike oil. They know that there's a percentage chance, and they manage their procedures to do that. So importantly, in most sales pipelines, or even in most oil drilling situations, there are some metrics about what works and what is appropriate, and also some qualification elements in those things that allow you to focus on the ones that are driving the best returns, or potentially driving the best returns. And that's exactly what you need to do in the innovation stage. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll explain it. An innovation pipeline is very much like a sales pipeline. At the beginning, you need to fill your innovation pipeline with a whole bunch of potential opportunities. These could be problems that you want to solve in the business. They could be opportunities outside or adjacent to the business that might be interesting for you to grow new things. And you need to have a certain bunch of criteria for success. And actually, we've developed at the bakery a model for this. There's a whole bunch of things that include, who's the stakeholder for this idea, who really cares about the success. Does that person have, the right position within the organization to get obstacles out of the way? How big is the potential if it were to scale? How big could this really be? And it's really important, just like that investment fund, that you understand what the metrics of your innovation pipeline needs to look like before you can progress things through the funnel. If you move on to the next slide for me, please, you'll be able to see that at each stage, there's a number of opportunities. If we look at this is actually the bakery statistics, where over the number of companies we've worked with over the last 2 years, we've looked at 149 different client challenges. We've reviewed close to 8,000 solutions. We've introduced over 1,500 companies, startups to those corporates. We've done about 178 different trials. And as a result, we've driven 76 scaling solutions. So this is a good, what we feel is a good metric, about 1 in 2 of all of the challenges coming out with a scaling solution. I think that's probably better than most people expect. If you can get 1 in 3, then that would be a really great hit rate. Obviously we've got a lot of people and a lot of experience to do this. The other important thing is, again, if you could just move quickly onto the next slide, I think there's another number at the end, which is, what return should you be getting? And, we think that if you measure this in the right way, and you're driving the right solutions, the right potential opportunities, and you've got the right criteria, you should be getting something like a 5 to 10 times return on your innovation spend. So, if you're not getting these numbers, if you don't understand what your numbers are, or your returns are lower than that, then you really need to be thinking about what the criteria are. So, I think a good average for a corporate is to think about, 5 to 10, let's say 7 times return on the innovation spend that you're putting in. And I think if you can start thinking about how that works in your organization, then you'll be able to see that you're doing a good job. So summarizing all of that information, I'm rushed through this. In the last slide, you'll see that there's a number of things. This isn't about gambling. It's really about spreading the risk, spreading your bets, and doubling down on the things that work, creating a portfolio of innovations that you're working on, and even a portfolio of solutions against each problem that you're working on. So that's important. Think of it like a pipeline, like a sales pipeline. Construct your metrics that work for you, and also there's a sort of another layer to this, which is the type of innovation that you're doing. Is it incremental innovation, just sort of solving problems and getting through the next year or so? Is it stuff that's adjacent to your business, connected? new opportunities, or is it really disruptive? And what's the time horizons for those things? And then if you can construct that whole strategy and understand what you're looking to try and return to the business for your innovation spend, then the important thing is to onboard everybody to this new idea of an innovation pipeline. And if they're aligned, they'll understand that failure isn't failure, it's just part of the overall strategy. I hope that's been useful. We've got lots of information on that. I'd love to, I don't know if we have any time for any questions, but please stick any questions you've got in the chat. Thanks very much indeed.
Andrew, thanks. Can I just keep you for a second?
I
absolutely find this fascinating, and I love your the way you actually articulate all the metrics and the numbers. Just from your experience when you've been working with the corporates, and you say sort of 1 in 2 you've had success in terms of scaling solutions. Typically, what size of funnel do the corporates need to be engaging? How many sort of innovative and startups do the corporates typically engage with in order to find that magic solution or that magic partnership?
Well, it's a really interesting question, Janet. For each of these opportunities that we talk about, these corporate problems that we're trying to solve, on average, we will look at 100 or more different solutions, and then we'll probably introduce them to 15 or 20, and they will probably trial 3 or 4, and if it does succeed, they'll scale 1. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Those are our figures, and different businesses have different ways of doing it. And the important thing is to make sure that all of those steps you do don't take huge amounts of time, and that you're not spending a huge amount of energy and time doing each one. It's about making very small decisions and moving quickly on to the next step. One of the other important things about success and that high hit rate, that 1 in 2 hit rate that we get, is mainly down to momentum. If you keep momentum up and keep people interested and excited, you have a higher chance of success. So there's a bunch of criteria that underpins these metrics.
And we've had a question from the audience, actually, from Linda Montgomery, that I think we'll just squeeze in before we let you go. And she was talking about, your presentation is very much about sort of new revenue opportunities. What about when you look to eliminate sort of expense and streamline as the need for innovation, which probably a lot of businesses are going through right now? Very good question. It's
a great question. And I actually disagree, sadly, that my presentation wasn't about those things. It's about any kind of innovation. In fact, those cost-saving innovations are really important. We would call them incremental innovations, that just doing stuff that you do now just better, more efficiently. And that makes up a lot of the kinds of issues that we see. I think the new opportunities are also important, but they're a separate layer within that pipeline. So again, the balance of how much you do that is, just making your business better, and those that are these new opportunities outside, either, just adjacent to what you do or completely disruptive. Getting that balance right is right. There's a accepted sort of formula, and it should be, 70, 20, 10. But what's right for your business is important to get right.
Brilliant. I know Linda's got more questions, but I think we might have to let Andrew go. Linda, it sounds like you should join our fellowship. I think you would really love it, because it sounds like you've got so many brilliant questions. So do stay on, because we're going to have a panel now. Thank you, Andrew. I look forward to catching up soon. That was really insightful.
Thanks.
But I'm going to introduce Lauren Quigley now, our Head of Innovation Programs, who's responsible for really driving forward our Open Innovation Fellowship, who's going to introduce her panel. And then Linda, do stay on, because you can ask that question around corporates to the Royal Mail. So over to Lauren. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Janet. And thank you again, Andrew, for joining us. Some really great tips there around aligning your open innovation activity closely with your business priorities and creating a really diverse portfolio of ideas, both of which really are essential to ensuring success. So I'm now delighted to welcome our speakers who will join me in a fireside chat to dig into how open innovation can be effectively harnessed to really accelerate disruptive technology adoption across large organisations and more traditional sectors. So we're joined today by Royal Mail and What Three Words. So Royal Mail actually partnered with What Three Words along with Drone Prep and Skyports to become the first nationwide UK parcel carrier to deliver parcels via an unmanned aerial vehicle in the Isle of Mull at the end of last year. And today we're going to dig a little into that incredible collaboration. So please do kind of pop questions in the chat as we go along. I'll make sure we get to them, either weave them through or come to them at the end. So I'm now delighted to be joined by Rebecca Hope, Head of Business Development UK and International at Royal Mail, and George Hall, Director at What Three Words. So I'm going to come to you first, Rebecca, to kick us off. If I may.
Yes.
So Royal Mail is it's a 500-year-old legacy company employing thousands of people across the UK. Remaining innovative must be a monumental challenge for you as an organisation. So can you give us an overview of kind of Royal Mail's innovation story, how the organisation approaches innovation and new ideas?
Yeah, sure, I'll do my best. We are indeed a company with a very long history, but because of that, it's quite easy to forget that within that, there is quite a strong background in innovation, you know, going all the way back to the penny black, which was the first sticky stamp, if you will, through to postcodes. I think they were about the 1950s, and we actually launched the first hovercraft delivery service as well back in the 60s. So it continues. More recently, we were the first UK carrier to introduce QR codes, so that customers could send and return items without the need to print a label. Parcel post boxes, I think they were 2019, and there's lots of innovative work ongoing around turning the red vans green to cover the environmental issues as well. Our approach to innovation is influenced by the size of the business, because it is huge. We're 3 to 4 times bigger than our nearest competitor, and we deliver more parcels than the rest of them combined, I think. So any changes that we implement across the business, across the network, has huge cost associated with it. In recent history, we've tended to be happy to be a fast follower, so allowing others to go on that innovation journey, if you will, learn from their experience, and then try and replicate it within our own environments. But more recently, especially with the arrival of our new CEO, Simon Thompson, and his background is quite an innovative one, having worked with companies such as Apple and Ocado, we've seen a growth in appetite for innovation in Royal Mail coming from above, from top down. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's almost, you know, I think people don't necessarily always imagine all the different things that you're kind of doing across such a huge organisation, but you know, you're right, the sort of scale and scope with which you've got to almost play and experiment is phenomenal, really. And you know, yeah, you mentioned things like postcodes and things like that. I think people just assume they've always existed, but they in and of themselves were an innovation.
Yes.
So kind of moving now to George and What Three Words. I mean, it would be great if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about What Three Words and kind of how your technology is used and how you work with partners to really drive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So What Three Words is an easy way to talk about location. So we have taken the whole world and we've broken it into a grid of 57 trillion 3 by 3 meter squares. And we've labeled every single square with 3 words in the dictionary. So you can literally find anywhere in the world with just 3 words. So to give you an example, the entrance to our office in London is filled count soap. So we work with businesses to take that technology and basically build it into their solutions. So if I was to jump in a Mercedes now, I could say, hey, Mercedes, take me to Apple Banana Spoon, and it would know what I was talking about. Other examples might be working with e-tailers in order to capture a 3-word address at checkout and pass that through to a carrier who can then convert that 3-word address to a coordinate and actually deliver to that exact point.
Wow, so in terms of impact, it's really streamlining efficiencies and kind of increasing the way that I guess brands can kind of engage with consumers in a much more effective way, which is obviously what we're all out there looking to do. So kind of moving on to this amazing kind of delivery project that you collaborated on, I know with a couple of other stakeholders as well. I mean, it would be great, perhaps, Rebecca, if you could kind of give us an overview of what that project was and how it came to be, kind of why Royal Mail looked to kind of collaborate with the three partners, and sort of, yeah, an overview really for sort of set, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Talk of drone delivery has been around for quite a few years now. I remember having my interview at Royal Mail for this job 4 years ago and bringing drones into it back then. So, but no one's really managed to get it off the ground, for pardon the pun, until now. So, as with most things in life, timing is everything. And it was actually Drone Prep who initially approached our previous CEO with their offering. We'd spoken to drone companies before, but Drone Prep had one of the most well thought out proposals, we thought, well developed setups we've seen. They have the right partnerships in place, what three words being a fine example. And we wanted to test the concept of drone delivery, just to see if there's any real future in it within our network. There were a few ideas that Drone Prep brought forward, and as we know, it was the Isle of Mull trial that made it through. And how it worked was that we took the delivery to the Isle of Mull as we normally would, and then from that point we selected one of the remote addresses on the Isle and used the drone to facilitate that delivery to what is quite a difficult or time-consuming delivery address. So it was to test the concept that drones could improve the delivery service.
And kind of, George, in terms of your role in obviously that, you know, kind of a key part of the collaboration, kind of how was your experience of kind of the multi-stakeholder collaboration? How did it work? Kind of, were there sort of challenges that needed to be overcome, and kind of how did you navigate those as a smaller organization that's maybe slightly more agile?
To be honest, I think it was a great experience, and I wish it happened more often. This idea of working with multiple stakeholders. I mean, we'd been speaking to Drone Prep for a while, and really keen to do a project together. And then the pandemic came, and then they said, "Guys, we've got this opportunity. Royal Mail are keen to do this. We're looking at the Isle of Mull. We've done stuff there before." So it was a natural kind of partnership, really. Yeah, and I think one of the issues with drone delivery is you have to be really sure of where you want something to be delivered, and a lot of that starts with whoever is receiving that delivery being able to both easily identify where it is and also easily communicate it. And I think one thing that's come from this is Royal Mail in this instance had clear ambition to do something innovative, and Drone Prep were really the ones who unlocked that, and together with Skyports providing the drones and the licensing and things. So from our perspective, it's amazing because it enabled something that we wanted to do, and getting those various moving parts together to enable innovation that a company like Royal Mail wanted was great, and it worked really well.
I mean, what about it do you think was it that made it so effective? You know, was it kind of having one clear stakeholder coordinating everyone? Was it kind of having a really clear goal that was really combined? I mean, in terms of kind of, you know, you sort of allude to the fact that maybe not all partnerships or collaborations are as seamless. So, you know, what made this one so effective, do you think?
From my perspective, I think it's taking that vision from Royal Mail and then being very open about open innovation, really, about looking to other partners, not trying to solve all of the problems that they had. They had a goal. They didn't want to solve it all themselves, and looking who can kind of satisfy various bits of that puzzle. What Three Words, for example, is a very small bit of this overall logistics challenge that was in place. So I think it's that. I think it's an openness. I think it's beginning that conversation, seeing who can help solve things, and really kind of running with it, and not letting big barriers from being a big company get into place, and just accepting that, hey, we can do a trial like this, and this is how we're going to make it work.
And I mean, leading straight on from that, really, kind of, you mentioned sort of big barriers and kind of, you know, the traditional assumption that with large organizations come lots of kind of hurdles and hoops to jump through. So, I mean, Rebecca, how was it kind of handled on your side to make sure that was as seamless as possible, and or that it, you know, the pace was maintained?
I think with a company of our size, it's not so much the hoops, that the governance that comes with being such a big company. So actually the drone trial, as that was a proof of concept innovation rather than a mass rollout, that was relatively simple to progress. The challenge comes when if you then want to take that further and have a full rollout across the business, because then that gets into the governance process that can slow the whole machine down, if you will. However, what I would say about the governance process is, because it is so thorough, it's so in depth and wide reaching across the business, most of the potential risks and challenges have been thought through already and worked through with the supplier and tested and retested and etc. So once you actually get that decision made, the rollout and the implementation is usually quite relatively quick and efficient.
I mean, that's quite impressive, really, because I think that's, like, for large organizations, that's often a really big challenge around things like procurement and kind of effective dissemination. So kind of in terms of sort of proof of concepts, I mean, is this, you know, one of how many that, say, Royal Mail might explore annually, say? Is it quite a common occurrence to kind of roll these sorts of things out, or are they more ad hoc?
It's increasing, should we put it that way? To build on what Andrew said earlier, it's about placing lots of small bets, if you will, and there's lots of areas that we're looking at in terms of innovation. So we are, let me think of a couple. The work with the drones continues. We're doing some more work on that. We are looking at the use of robots to support delivery as well. We're looking at an innovative way of same-day delivery in the pharmaceutical sector for medicines, etc. So there's a few things. There's a rolling program, which I am not in charge of, but there is a rolling program of innovation. And as I said earlier, from the top down, from the CEO and the Chief Commercial Officer, all have a huge interest in this and progressing and seeing what innovation can do to drive Royal Mail forward into the future.
It's really exciting to hear kind of how many different different areas you're looking at. And I mean, in terms of those proof of concepts, I mean, how many do you think traditionally may kind of progress to that next level? I mean, how often do things kind of then get rolled out? And I mean, for an example, with this, you know, initiative, is the future kind of potentially looking at how this could get rolled out across the whole organisation, UK wide, or?
It's at the moment, I think we're doing a consultation piece. If I understand right, we're doing a consultation piece with the residents of the Isle of Mull to get their feedback on it and what they think about it, and what their views are. So that'll help form future decisions. But I believe that we're looking at other uses of drones. So rather than final mile delivery, is there elsewhere in the network that causes us challenges that drones may be able to help with? And different types of drones as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that kind of you're so kind of customer centric in your approach to kind of open innovation, that really kind of bringing them in early and kind of throughout the whole cycle, which is, you know, what we love to hear. Kind of, you know, George, I guess from your kind of experience of, you know, being that more agile organization that I guess is traditionally working with larger organizations and kind of helping them to disrupt the way they might work, or, you know, bring kind of different experiences to their customers. What sort of advice might you have for those larger organizations in terms of working with more disruptive companies like yours to make the collaboration really effective?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one thing we encounter, I think, a bit is this misconception from larger organizations that innovation is somehow an admission of failure, that there's something that they can't fix internally and therefore they have to innovate and look for outside partners. And I just don't think that's the case at all. I think, you know, I think it should be encouraged to listen to your customer and look at ways you can improve your customer experience. And then assess, you know, is this something we can do internally, or actually is it better to look for a company that can answer to that? So I think that would be my first piece of advice. And then the other is just feedback from very large organizations, we often speak to people who have incredibly innovative mindsets, and the business as a whole might be innovative, but they look at the roadmap ahead and they see these huge challenges, these, you know, technical barriers. Rebecca mentioned governance and approvals and all sorts of barriers that come up. And I think that tends to kill ideas before they even get off the ground. So my advice would be, don't approach it in that way. You know, you can be incredibly innovative without typing a piece of code. You can break things down into multi-phase approaches and say, look, here's the problem. Let's try something very low tech, very risk-free, and actually kind of build a POC or a phasing around that to later launch into the company in a very iterative sense. Andrew before was talking about incremental innovation. And I think that's just a really good expression. It can be relatively risk-free to innovate incrementally, try small things without getting, I suppose, disheartened or put off by the future idea of getting approvals and tech buy-in and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, innovation ultimately is just the cycle of fail, iterate, iterate until you get to somewhere. And so kind of allowing for that process within an organization can feel very uncomfortable, I think, for some larger organizations that maybe aren't built essentially in that kind of way. But it's great to hear kind of that Royal Mail's got such a kind of open culture and seems to be really kind of driving this forward across the whole organization, which is amazing. I mean, I guess like the reverse question over to you, Rebecca, really, in terms of kind of organizations that, you know, you must get approached kind of all the time by companies that want to try and run proof of concepts with you or trial different technologies. I mean, maybe what are the best channels for companies kind of when they're looking at doing that, but B, kind of what advice might you have for kind of making sure that those companies really at the right stage to do that sort of kind of activity with you?
It's an interesting point, because I think one of the impacts that the drone trial had was to create, internally it created a lot of excitement, obviously, and it really showed Royal Mail from the inside that the business is prepared to do these things, to think outside the box, to be a bit more creative in order to keep us in our industry leading position, and that's a really good feeling for us. And it's, you know, we know that there's other trials going on, but also externally, it shows that Royal Mail's open to new ideas and to pushing boundaries and to taking a few chances. And that has been apparent in the number of inquiries we've had since the drone trial of other businesses, drone companies, but other things as well, coming to us to say, you know, can we work with you? You know, is this something you're looking at? And I think they do the research into what the key areas would be. So I think with Royal Mail, for example, you don't have to dig too deep to see what our key areas are. Anything that can help us drive delivery performance, improve the customer experience, improve efficiency in our network. And also, last but by no means least, is anything that can build on our success in managing environmental impact. Yeah, that's a real key focus for all carriers, but Royal Mail especially. It's key area for us. It's something we see increasingly in tenders that we get in. It's a big focus for our customers. You know, the people buying these products expect it to be done as environmentally friendly way as possible. It's an area we perform very well in, actually. We've hit our targets for this year, but there's some ambitious targets going forward. So I think anybody who is wanting to approach a big organisation is research what their key areas of focus are, and see if you can help solve their problems for them.
And do you think kind of this sort of public partnership, which has been quite publicly celebrated and been really successful, might kind of shift the culture slightly more at Royal Mail to kind of really, you know, also encourage ideas to come from within? You know, naturally, you know, when organisations are really doing really exciting things in the ecosystem, you're attracting really great talent to join. You know, do you feel like there's maybe an acceleration in that direction for Royal Mail?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely. Innovation is something that we're building on all the time, and We've been quite fairly cautious with it in the past, and we've a lot of what we've done, I mentioned the QR codes that we've done in the parcel post boxes. That is innovation. It's not on the scale of the drone in terms of the partnerships and being out there, but it was really built on feedback from the customers. We have two types of customer. We have the businesses that pay for us to deliver their parcels, and then we have the end consumer who receives them. And we try and get feedback from those people whenever we can, and we feed it back into the business to say, this is what our customers are asking for, this is what they need from Royal Mail. And that's really what drives the development and the innovation within the business. Yeah,
I mean, which is fantastic, really everything built around the consumer, which is absolutely as it should be. Kind of looking at obviously your technology further, George, kind of location technology, I think, there's a really big kind of role for it to play in sustainability and kind of a lot of the, enhancements that obviously Rebecca was just alluding to there. I mean, where do you think the future of location technology kind of could go? And how do you think kind of open innovation and sort of collaboration with organisations like Royal Mail might accelerate that?
I think it's an exciting time. I think logistics generally has changed massively over the years, but even in the last 12 months, there's a fundamental shift, certainly in terms of demand as well. From our side, I think there's two things. It's fixing issues that exist already, and then it's enablement. And I think what we'll see is location tech coming in and fixing issues that we're all aware of. So I think pretty much everyone has had that experience of a food delivery, for example, not coming to your front door, and you're calling the driver down the road and they can't find your front door, or a parcel being delivered and you've got a big postcode and they just can't find your address in a rural location. So I think we'll see, with an increase in kind of volume, those issues will need to be fixed. But I think also more exciting is the enablement side of things. So as we look to hopefully lockdown lifts and we come into the summer, I think we'll see a lot more flexibility in kind of answering to consumer demand. So deliveries to places that don't have a traditional address. So for example, getting some beers delivered in a park, or maybe getting your parcel delivered to the boot of your car. I think all of this stuff we've spoken about for a while, but we're now in an environment where consumers want it, retailers are in a position to pivot towards it, and logistics companies are getting to a point when they can technically also offer it. So I think that's what's exciting.
It's really exciting. Yeah, I mean, especially kind of this idea of being able to kind of get deliveries wherever you are. I remember, I've been in places or cities where you'd get given a pink balloon and you go to the park and then they come and deliver your pizza. But this is far more sophisticated than that, which is great. So we've got some questions from the audience. I'm going to sort of bring them in now. So we've got a question from Ashley George, I think probably for Rebecca. How does an enterprise avoid kind of piloted toes, which I think is kind of like, kind of being stuck in pilot phases with organizations, and how do you kind of like move beyond that phase? Because I think, some of our scale-ups that we've worked with before kind of sometimes feel like they don't ever move past that pilot phase. How can enterprises like yours kind of ensure that doesn't necessarily happen?
Well, it will happen, because we know from placing lots of small bets that they don't all come through to fruition. So it will happen, and it is the minority that come through into fully formed and rolled out solutions. So I think that is a little bit part of the course. And as Andrew was saying, businesses do it in different departments. I work in sales, totally heard what he said about you don't expect every sale to come good, every marketing activity to have 100% success rate. How do you avoid it? I'm not really sure. It's probably all in the preparation and doing the research, and being prepared to make tweaks to your initial plan, really. So if it's not going right, then let's move on to plan B and try that.
We also talk quite a lot with our fellows on the Open Innovation Fellowship about kind of the importance of saying no firmly and kind of clearly at the right stage, because I think, again, we've seen it with companies kind of where things drag on, and kind of if it's not working, there's like sometimes larger organizations don't want to say no because they don't want to disappoint, but I think there's a kind of need from both sides to really manage expectations, which I think is quite important in the kind of transparent relationships. So, and question for George. Having managed to make a successful partnership with Royal Mail, what's your advice to other companies in approaching large organisations and getting in front of someone to pitch your product or service?
I mean, in the case of Royal Mail, I think find yourself a drone prep who are really good at facilitating that. But generally, I think Rebecca raised a good point, which is understand the vision of the company you're looking to work with. What are they trying to achieve is really important. But that's really that's in terms of landing your message. But I think there's a big part of, you can have everyone agree that this is a great thing, but actually to turn that into something tangible and get it off the ground is actually a lot more of a challenge. And I think there it's really a case of being respectful of the challenges that large companies face. There's often a lot of technical debt that has to be resolved before they can implement new systems. Often there's a lot of frustration from everyone that things move a bit slowly. And I think just respecting that and offering up solutions that you may have had success with other customers. So for example, hey, we could try it like this worked for them.
Yeah.
And kind of giving those solutions, giving the tools to whoever you're dealing with internally to help make it a reality, and just empowering them to get the success that they probably want as well.
Oh yeah, please, Rebecca.
Can I add to that? I would say educate them. I think some companies approach big organisations thinking that they know not everything, but they know exactly what they want and they know exactly how they want to achieve it, and they don't. Part of the reason for the collaborations is to get the expertise from companies who know. So the best way to get someone's attention is to teach them something and guide them and support them in that way, rather than just asking them what they want all the time. Help shape that, because quite often the businesses will have an overarching idea of what they want to achieve, but no real idea of how to get there. And that's what the collaborations can support with, is that education piece.
That's a really, really good point, I think. And I think that's often why we see such successful kind of entrepreneurs spinning out of kind of sectors and organizations that they've worked in, and then going and kind of, solving the problems they themselves have experienced. So that's a really great piece of advice. We have another question from Linda. So Rebecca, you have a wonderful CEO and a culture of innovation and some great successes. So tick, tick, tick. So how, advice, what might you kind of give as advice for corporates, or how someone might innovate within a corporate that doesn't necessarily have this kind of culture of open innovation and really strong leadership?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Yes, probably a bit spoiled, aren't we? A corporate a business that doesn't have that, it's probably creating a strong business case, and I keep going back to it, but it's the education piece as well. Is try and demonstrate something that people didn't know, that your bosses didn't know. Try and show them a way that they hadn't thought of. And if you can find a collaborator who can demonstrate success with perhaps even a competitor or a similar company, and can help educate, then that's often, I believe, the key to unlocking it.
I mean, George, anything to add on that point? I know obviously you're kind of from the scale up side, but I'm sure you've got some insights.
No, I think that covers it, to be honest. Can't expand on that. I'd be talking for the sake of talking.
Yeah, no, it can be. I mean, it's a very challenging kind of point, Linda, if you've not got necessarily the culture within which to kind of innovate. I think it's about, as Rebecca says, kind of establishing really good business cases. You can implement your own kind of framework to really demonstrate solid ROI, because that's obviously what kind of senior leaders want to see, especially if they're kind of going to commit with budget and things like that. I think it's about that kind of process, which often makes people feel a lot more at ease, and for some really remove some of that risk. So yeah, and maybe looking externally and kind of building a kind of network of peers, potentially in different sectors, of kind of innovators that can maybe kind of be a sounding board, I think could also be a great option. So I'm going to move to kind of final question, and then we'll sort of wrap up. But it feels very obvious, and we've got lots of great takeaways from today, but kind of what value have you really found from kind of forming partnerships in terms of driving innovation? And, you know, I assume this is going to definitely be the future for you both, but kind of what is the real value, do you think, of kind of forming these innovation partnerships?
Who do you want to go?
Go for it, Rebecca. You go first.
I think that the real benefit to it is gathering the expertise. The definition of innovation is something new, which therefore means you're probably not familiar with it. So we recognise and we celebrate our strengths in Royal Mail, but we also know that there are advantages of harnessing other people's strengths and knowledge as well. What Three Words is a great example. You know, we have postcodes. They're brilliant. They're marvellous at getting us to sort and deliver parcels to the right place. But the drone delivery needed something else, because a postcode can cover quite a big area, and particularly in somewhere like the Isle of Mull. Why would we reinvent the whole postcode system to be able to carry out a drone trial when What Three Words were there and had everything that we needed? And also the other benefit, as I alluded to earlier, is it builds momentum. The word gets out there that you're a business that's open to looking at something that might be a little bit outside of the box. Businesses hopefully will start to bring some good ideas to you that are well targeted and timely and meet your business strategies. And it gains momentum. Yeah, I mean, nobody's standing still. Every business needs innovation in order to survive these days. No one's standing still, and neither should you. So look into these things. You won't do everything. You won't progress with everything, and not everything will succeed. But somebody will come along with something that you haven't thought of that will be genius.
It's very true. George, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding that customer demands and what people want. It's not static. So I think if you can get in a habit of being innovative and trying things, it gives you the ability to answer to those demands quickly, instead of seeing a need and waiting 3 years before you answer it. And it's simple things from our perspective. You know, a customer goes on a website and you let them choose what they want to order. Why not choose where they want it to delivered? So whether that's actually getting it to the front door, or hey, do you know what? I would like a delivery in my garden because I'm not going to be in, or here's my safe space, and here's the 3 words for it. So I think it's about putting the consumer first, or putting the customer first, even if it's another business, and being able to be agile in answering to their needs, really.
Amazing. Well, both, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I think we've had some amazing insights shared. I think particularly love the idea of kind of help shape kind of what people think they want, or help kind of people really pull that out. I think that's so important. And kind of our final wrap up points around, you know, being really customer centric and being willing and agile enough to respond to that, I think is where partnerships really can kind of come and flourish. So thank you both so much for joining us. Yeah, and just to sort of wrap up for today, I want to thank everyone who has joined us in the audience. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. I hope you enjoyed the session. We are running this session, well, this session is one of a series. So please do join us for the next session, which will be on the 22nd of April. I think we've got the date and time here now just on the slide. So please do put that in your diary as a save the date. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion today and had some great takeaways. A final sort of thank you to Andrew, to Rebecca and to George for joining us and for sharing all their insights. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all so much.